long-winded tale written by Eruwenn. Oxthiller scurried down the university corridors as fast as their flippers could propel them, hoping not to be late to the bonus conversational component of their English exam. The language was notoriously difficult, Boxhiller's peers had said, and filled with myriads of metaphors and idioms that were a hazard for all who attempted to understand them. It was common knowledge amongst the student body that you joined Professor Jacobi's course a functional member of society and emerged from it an emotional wreck, both from the madness of the English language and the indifferent, uncaring nature of the professor. It had been a dare from a romantic interest that had gotten Boxhiller to sign up for the course, as otherwise they wouldn't have made the attempt. They had no appreciable talent for acquiring languages and were not known for gambling away their sanity on dangerous learning materials. Thus far, Boxhiller had managed to acquire just shy of a passing mark in the course by ignoring all sense of caution and rationality, and just slapping unrelated words together as though they were making a sandwich out of the last dregs of food in a much-neglected kitchen. The mutable and metaphorical nature of the language had gotten them surprisingly far, but unfortunately, it was not quite far enough. It was only a few points more that Boxhiller needed, just a slightly higher score to enable them to get a passing grade, and just one last course needed to help propel them successfully into another educational year. Just this one last thing. They had no idea why a word-scrambling, haphazard tactic worked in English more often than not, but it was today, here in this establishment of learning, and now, as they pushed open the door and took a seat across from the infamous Professor Jacobi, that it would truly be put to the test. "Welcome, Poxhill," the human said as Poxhill took a seat. "I appreciate you coming to make the extra effort in your English studies. Not everyone is bold enough to attempt the bonus conversation, you know." He smiled, but there was no comfort to be found in that expression. "As a general reminder, the task is as follows. Listen to my tale and comprehend enough to make a congruent statement at the end of it." It seemed an overly reasonable offer for bonus points, but Boxhiller was wary. They had, despite the warnings of their peers, managed to attend each and every class that Professor Jacobi had held. They knew all too well, from first-hand experience, how such reasonable beginnings so often led to madness and linguistic disarray. "Are you ready?" With a nervous nod of the uppermost parts of their body, that meant yes, right? They prepared for the worst. Professor Jacobi smiled that particular smile, one Boxhiller had come to read as a warning rather than heralding the arrival of anything pleasant, and began to speak. "This is, potentially, a long-winded tale. I'll just breeze along to the pertinent portion, shall I?" With an idle wondering of what the movement of air currents had to do with storytelling, Boxhiller nodded a second time, feeling thankful that a gesture could take the place of words. It was, perhaps, the single thing they liked about the language. "I tell you, there was something in the wind, something that felt more than just whistling in it. Despite the way I started to feel a little wound up at the news, I figured I'd wind down at the bar with Windsor before winding up doing anything rash. It meant nothing. I mean, I'm not the type to cast stones against the wind." Wind, the word echoed in Boxhiller's brain, rattling around until it was utterly devoid of meaning, then reduced to a nonsense syllable. They had known metaphors were a hazard. They had thought that, through all their last-minute studying, they had sufficiently prepared. They had been in grave error. And as Professor Jacobi drew breath, Boxhiller's thoughts whirled around in an inescapable vortex of confusion, desperation mounting as they tried to make any sense of what they were hearing. Unmindful of his student's plight, or perhaps reveling in it, the human continued to speak in easy-going, effortless manner. "We stayed there for a time, drinking and just shooting the breeze. There I was, 3 sheets to the wind, when I caught wind of change from the old windbag. An ill wind. Something about it made me really feel wind and water. I'm but a candle in the wind, and rightly aware of this. So Windsor's words really put the wind up me, you know. So many permutations of wind, thought Boxeller, and none of it seems to be repeating. How could just a single syllable of a word mean so much in so many different contexts? It was common knowledge that English was an utter mutant abomination of language, and at last, too late to save their own sanity, they completely understood why. After abruptly getting my second wind, I could tell which way the wind was blowing, and, throwing caution to the wind, I paid my tab and then, like the wind, I ran. I kept on going until I was far away and utterly winded. How could the human just keep talking? The words hurt to think about. The unending barrage of words hurt in a physical sense. Thinking hurt, especially when that horrid four-letter monosyllabic word swam into view in their mind's eye. Boxeller couldn't help but physically flinch at the professor's impending presentation of another painful paragraph. Once my presence at the bar had been scattered to the four winds, I did my best to learn how to bend in the wind. After all, as the saying goes, a reed before the wind lives on while mighty oaks do fall. I'll just wait until the wind is fair again before hoisting my proverbial sail. Was it possible for a brain to wheeze? Would it be possible for them to ever regain a functional brain? Silence. Blissful silence washed over their ears. It took far longer than Boxeller would later admit for them to realize that Professor Jacobi had finished speaking. The human was waiting on them to respond, waiting on them to make the move that would result in success or defeat. It hurts to think. I don't know if I can. Long, dreadful seconds ticked by. Come on, you fool! Your entire education is on the line. You can't just give up like this. They took in a slow breath, stalling for time as their brains slowly lurched back into something resembling functionality. Just answer something, anything. Just make something up. It's bound to make enough sense at a certain level. The tactic has worked for you so far, at least. The whole cursed language has metaphors. Oh, come on, Boxeller. Say something. Just blurt out the first thing that comes to mind. Anything will do, at this rate. Maybe something else to do with the wind, but what else is there? At long last, their mouth finally deigned to respond to motor cortex signals. Better to bend wind than to break wind. Professor Jacobi's breath hitched. He blinked. The human, so the rumors whispered, emotionally untouchable professor, stared at them for a long moment before suddenly collapsing into paroxysms of mirth, as his muscular hand rhythmically hit the desk with strength that seemed to make the entire room shake. His laughter belted out with utter abandon. Tears ran down his face as he struggled and failed to regain composure. Boxeller simply sat there, watching the professor overwhelmed with a bittersweet sinking feeling. They had, somehow by sheer fluke, told what could only be the finest joke that they would ever manage to tell over the course of their entire existence. And they had somehow managed to remain entirely ignorant of the exact nature of the punchline. Student Boxeller would wind up obtaining full marks on their final exam due to the cleverness and brevity of wit. End of story. Human Problems, Human Solutions, written by New VS Ater NBM. Aren't we making too much fuss of this?
This is serious, sir.
A box arrived empty, it happens. Give the customer an apology. 30 rotations, free shipping, and move on.
Unfortunately, it is not that simple. This failure falls into the you had one job category.
We were lucky it befell upon a Karen. We won't be that lucky next time. We make billions of deliveries every rotation. Eventually a box will leave the warehouse empty. We can't be asked for perfection, best of all by humans.
We know that. They know that, but nothing rallies humans more effectively as pointing their greasy fingers at someone else. Once word gets out that a Xeno-owned company failed its one job, our reputation will be irreparably damaged.
Whatever loss we may end up suffering, I seriously doubt it'll surpass the 48 trillion credits.
I understand it is a considerable sum, but 100% efficiency does not come cheap.
How does checking for an empty box take so much money?
Detecting a difference in weight of varying packages on a moving assembly is remarkably engineeringly challenging.
I'm not convinced. I didn't snatch this company from the cryogenic frozen fingers of Jeff Bezos, only to turn it into a black hole of my beloved credits.
Sir, the humans are a bottomless well of laziness, and we hold the monopoly on the front porch delivery. Whatever the investment is made to keep this market will be returned tenfold in the long run.
Acknowledging there would be no talking her out of it, he acquiesced to his chief of operations, but not without flexing his corporate muscles. Very well, but this thing is better be flawless, or else heads will roll. It was over schedule, it was over budget, but it was done. A perfect, automated system monitoring billions of packages simultaneously. An AI scanning all databases of the galaxy, predicting the weight of those packages to a fraction of a newton. A series of intricate scales along with assembly lines, accounting even the relativistic differences in mass from the track's movement. A true marvel of modern engineering, and a flawless one, to the relief of all involved. A quarter past, then a trimester, then a semester, all without a single empty package leaving the warehouse. Soon the fiscal cycle ended, and it was time for the system's routine maintenance. All without hitch, all according to plan, all except the facility of Europa. Because, of course, what would be the one source of headaches for management, if not the single spot in the universe where nagging of politicians and unions prevented replacing the human workers with drones? The COO arrives at the facility and, not wanting to waste a second more than necessary amongst the hairless pests, dismisses all of the customary bootlicking and heads straight to the factory floor, where she summons the floor manager. It is my understanding that you shut off our top-of-the-line system. Yes, ma'am.
Care to explain why?
With all due respect, you're always a pain in the cheeks, ma'am.
If the system wasn't working according to specifications, I'd expect you to report it with the corporate hierarchy.
No, ma'am, it worked just fine. Every time I caught an empty box, it would halt the whole line, and the mechanical arm would just push it out. It dragged out the job, got on everyone's nerves, so after half a shift, we shut it down.
I don't believe that you understand how vital this project is for the company. This is way above your pay grade. It is imperative that no empty package ever leaves this assembly line.
Oh yeah, ma'am. We got that from all the fuzz you people made on our factory floor. Don't worry. We made sure all the empty boxes will be kept out of the line.
We had the best minds of the galaxy spend endless time and resources on this issue. How could you, poor substitutes of drones, possibly assure the same result?
We grabbed an old fan from storage and we put it right next to the line. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.